These top 10 recruits are going to blow your mind. So let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name is Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling for the Fanco 50 series, where we're talking about the toughest high school wrestlers in the country. So far in the series, we've discussed what are the toughest tournaments in the country that have qualified these guys for the Fanco 50. We've discussed the top colleges recruiting these guys, as well as in the last video, we talked about the top 25 guys on this list. So if you're interested in any of those other videos, I highly recommend that you check out the full linked playlist in the description down below. And that brings us now into the top 10 guys. And I'm super stoked to tell you about each one of them. And at the end of this video, I'm actually going to leave a bonus for you. So make sure you stick around because I'm going to leave you a bonus discussing each of these top 50 guys on my list with even more details and stats that you may want to know. Now, with that said, let's talk about these top 10 guys. And the top 10 guy, the first guy on this list, of course, is Hunter Katka. Katka is a two-time Pennsylvania state champion. And you see down below in those tournaments that I have linked in the report card right here, he is a Beast of the East placer as well as a Super 32 placer, and not only did he place in those tournaments, but he won those tournaments, which is darn impressive. Now he's heading to Virginia Tech, where right now we have John Borst, who is actually just a junior at Virginia Tech at the current lineup in the weight at 285 pounds, where he is projected to be as a heavyweight. Now Katka is the first Delaware County wrestler to win 2 Pennsylvania state titles. He is also a 3-time medalist in Pennsylvania, and he's just somebody who has just been very impressive and dominant on the college scene, especially as a heavyweight, and that's really what qualified him for these top 10 guys and why he's really impressive to me going into college. As we move on, we look at Bo Bartlett. Bartlett is a guy who is heading to Penn State. So, you Nittany Lion fans, this is somebody that you really need to have your eye out for if you do not have your eye on him already. He's projected to be 141 pounds, having wrestled 138 in high school. Of course, we know right now that is Nick Lee's spot at 141 pounds. Now, he placed at the Ironman tournament where he made the finals and placed second with a loss to Frankie Tal Shahar, who is a top 30 guy in the country in the Fanco 50. But as we look at, he wrestled another top 30 guy in Sammy Hilligus, who's actually going to Virginia Tech, where he wrestled him in the Powerade finals and ended up defeating him. Now Bartlett is mean on top. He is also a pinner, which makes me super excited about him. And he's got some dirty takedowns, which makes me super pumped to see him at Penn State. I think he really has that Penn State style, and that's what I'm pretty interested to see how he's going to do. Now, he's a 4-time national prep champion, having won his Who's Number 1 match also this past year, which is darn impressive. Now, Bartlett is definitely somebody that you need to have your eye on in the future going into college wrestling. As we look at the number 8 guy, this is Keegan O'Toole. Now, O'Toole is not going to Penn State. He's actually going to Missouri. So he's going to Mizzou, and that kind of makes sense. I mean, look at his high school. He's from Arrowhead High School, and he wrestles at the Ben Askren Wrestling Academy, which, you look at that club and the tie to his high school and to Mizzou, it all kind of adds up and makes sense that that's where he's going. So this past year, he actually placed 3rd at Fargo, and he defeated Chase Saldate, who is a top 10 ranked guy on the Fanco 50. We'll get to him in just 1 minute. He actually defeated him a couple times. He also had a tech fall at the Who's Number 1 event, Flow Wrestling's Who's Number 1 event. Keegan O'Toole has just been dominating the high school scene, actually having won the Junior Dan Hodge Trophy. Of course, we know Spencer Lee won the Dan Hodge Trophy this past year, but he won the Junior Dan Hodge Trophy this past year. He is Wisconsin's 18th 4-time state champion. So a 4-time Wisconsin state champion, which is an impressive feat on its own. He pinned his way to a state title. I mean, he has just been crushing the scene in high school wrestling, and I'm super excited to see how he does, especially with his 111 match win streak that he currently has. And that moves us to Josh Saunders. Saunders is heading to Cornell, and Cornell has just been loading up on talent. I mean, just absolutely loading up on talent, and really have been over the last 10 years, has been a team constantly in contention and putting guys on in the national finals. Now, Saunders is a guy who placed at the Super 32, actually made the finals, placing second. Wrestled at Who's Number One event, losing to Anthony Etchemendia, who is going to Ohio State. You may or may not know a little bit about him. Now, one thing about him is actually he wrestled at Fargo this past year. You see that he won. He defeated Ridge Lovett of Nebraska, which is a match of note there. He actually also defeated Lachlan Mcneil in the semis. So Josh Saunders is somebody who is just absolutely, he has a beautiful shot. He's a point scoring machine. He just scores points and points and points, and he's just very relaxed in stressful situations. He's somebody I'm interested in seeing on the college scene as a top 7 guy in the Fanco 50. Now, another thing I want to note here about Saunders is he actually gave up his 4th title, his attempt at a 4th state title, because he went to train at the Olympic Training Center. So he's got his eyes set on more than just a state title. He has his eyes really set far in advance on the future, which gives me hope for him. Next, we move on to Chase Saldate. Saldate is somebody who he just really revs me up. I think it's really fun to watch him wrestle. I watched him wrestle at the Reno Tournament of Champions this past year in person, and wow, he is a great wrestler. He's actually just a one-time California state champion, but California is one of the toughest state tournaments to actually win because it's just all one division, and he finally got his job done this past year. Some cool videos on YouTube. You can Google his name, check him out there, where he actually goes through the story of winning that state title. But he is actually trained with Khabib and is coached by DC, which is very impressive. So he finally won his California state championship with 5 out of 6 falls throughout his way to a title. The one that wasn't a fall was a major decision. Ooh, just a major decision. So very impressive by Saldate, finally winning that title in his senior year and heading to Michigan State, which brings a lot to Michigan State and a Big Ten school, which you're going to see his name in a couple years. Mark my words. Next up on this list is a guy who's not going to a Big Ten school, but is actually going to Oklahoma State. And in Oklahoma State, geez, they're bringing in some guys. They are bringing in some guys, and this is Dustin Plot. Now, Plot is wrestled 195 pounds in high school, projected to be 184 in college. Maybe he bumps up to 97, but that's where he's projected to be. Now, he actually placed at Fargo this past year. He placed second, losing to Abe Assad. You may know that name, of course, on the college scene if you follow that. He's a multiple-time finalist, actually, at the tournament. Now, he's a 2-time Oklahoma State champion. And look, some of his impressive wins over Patrick Kennedy, another guy who I'll get to in just a minute. And it has 74 career falls. 74 career falls out of his 131 wins, which is just impressive to me. Now, listen, the cool thing about Oklahoma State that I also want to mention is that they actually had the number 1 and number 2 guys in the country. Now, Plot here, unfortunately, was injured this past season. You see he wrestled at Fargo, but then was injured after. But they had the top 2 guys. You could have seen him end up as a top guy, depending on if maybe he actually wrestled the rest of the season. But just based on that, that's kind of where he ends up. Next up, we have Patrick Kennedy, who I mentioned, as we move past the top 5 into the top 4, and Patrick Kennedy is heading to Iowa. He is somebody that Iowa needs to be excited about. Why? He is a 4-time state champion out of Minnesota. Maybe you've known some other multiple-time Minnesota state champions, such as Gable Steveson, such as Mark Hall, such as Greg Kirkfleet, who I think you're going to learn a little bit more about in these upcoming years. But just Minnesota has just been breeding some impressive wrestlers over these past couple of years. Now, he is on a was on a 112 match win streak, with his last match coming in his freshman year. Now, if you're wondering how he has 223 wins and the win streak doesn't really add up, think about it this way, which I honestly forgot about for a second while I was thinking the numbers didn't add up. Minnesota, you can actually wrestle 6 years in the state tournament in high school. So that's kind of what happened there. He actually placed 3rd and 7th in middle school, in 7th and 8th grade, or what I would consider middle school, and ended up winning the state tournament in his next 4 seasons. He is somebody who his only win streak actually is behind Brady Berge of Penn State. So that'll be very interesting to see how Kennedy does at Iowa. I'm interested to see how he's going to compete. Next up is another Oklahoma State guy in AJ Ferrari. Now, I have him listed as Allen, Texas, because that's kind of where he graduated high school, but he has wrestled in the past at Blair and at Bergen Catholic. Now, Ferrari is a cadet world bronze medalist, a Fargo champion, a two-time Ironman champ, and a Beast of the East champ. Now, you see he didn't have any of those accolades this season. He didn't wrestle any tournaments this season because he was injured, but those are just, that's why he's so high up on this list. He's won those tournaments in the past, and he has just had an impressive high school career. That's what moves him so high up on this list, and I'm interested to see how he does for Oklahoma State in the future. Now, honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. One of the guys I'm most excited to see isn't even the number one guy. I'm excited to see the number one guy in college, but this kid right here, Lachlan Mcneil, dang, he has a cool story, first of all, a very cool story, which I'll tell you in just a minute, as well as just an impressive high school career. So McNeil is actually somebody who, his dad was an Olympic wrestler for Great Britain. They ended up moving to Abu Dhabi, which he ended up getting into wrestling there, ended up moving to Canada, which, taken from I believe his mom or dad's job. And I'm getting all this from a track wrestling article I want to mention. I'll have that linked up, so I recommend that you check out that article. Really cool about his career, but there wasn't enough competition in Canada, so he moved to he helped and got into competition across the United States, where he wrestled for Wyoming Seminary. Wow, he has a pretty cool story where he's always looking for the next biggest competition, a Pennsylvania State prep champ, and he's going to UNC, a great pickup for UNC. And you see all these tournaments that he's won: Ironman, Powerade, Super 32, wrestled at Fargo. At Powerade, he had 3 falls in a major decision as well as a decision. At Super 32, he defeated another Fanco 50 recruit in Justin Rivera. And his only loss at Fargo this past year was actually to Josh Saunders. Now, he did end up defeating another wrestler in Sammy Helios, who is another top 30 wrestler in the Fanco 50. So, dang, Lachlan Mcneil, I'm super psyched to see how he does. And that brings us to the number one guy. And remember, I do have a bonus right after this, so you want to stick around for that. But first, I want to talk about Braxton Amos. No relation to Famous Amos, as far as I'm concerned, but Braxton Amos is a 3-time West Virginia state champion. He is actually going to Wisconsin. He had a couple of other school choices. I mean, his options were wide open between Penn State, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech. Those were his really top 5 schools, but he ultimately decided on Wisconsin. Now, Braxton Amos, what makes him so impressive, other than his undefeated record at 142-0, he has 5 Fargo titles, 3 Powerade titles, as well as 3 Ironman and Super 32 titles. He has 11 West Virginia junior state championships, which, don't mean as much as like a high school state championship, but it's still impressive to note that he actually won all of those, and he just crushed his way through each of those brackets. But one of the most impressive points is that he didn't give up an offensive point in high school. He didn't give up an offensive point. Now, this is why the kid coming out of Parkersburg South High School in West Virginia is somebody to have on your list. Look at all these tournaments he's won, not just once, but multiple times, not even giving up any points, any offensive points. That's why Braxton Amos is somebody that you really, really, really need to be watching out for. And that brings us next to, of course, our bonus. And our bonus download here is the Fanco 50 Class of 2020 Recruit Report Card. I will have that linked down below. These are stats, facts, and figures on the top 50 guys, diving deep into all of them. Now, of course, I have the full playlist where you can check out some of these stats, but this is totally free to you. You can totally check it out on your own time and download and check out and really study each of these guys. I went deep as I could in this video series, but this is something that if you are a wrestling fan, you're really, really going to enjoy that. Now that brings us to the end of this series, but if you missed a video in this playlist, I'll have the full playlist link down here that you can check out on your own time. And right up here is the next video I recommend watching after you've seen this one. So what are you waiting for? Stop stalling and get on watching.